Beetlejuice, a single name that launched one of the strangest cult classics in movie history. Tim Burton's Beetlejuice isn't just a comedy, and it's not just a horror movie either. It's a bizarre, twisted roller coaster that somehow balances both. But behind the laughs and screams are secrets, rewrites, and downright creepy details you probably never knew. From the horrifying original script to Michael Keaton's improvised chaos, here are 20 creepy and crazy facts about Beetlejuice that will make you see this ghost with the most in a whole new light. Fact number 1. It didn't start as a comedy. When people think of Beetlejuice, they picture Michael Keaton's manic energy, striped suits, and outrageous slapstick. But here's the thing, it wasn't supposed to be funny at all. The original script for Beetlejuice, written by Michael McDowell, was actually a straight-up horror movie. No jokes, no dance numbers, and definitely no lovable chaos demon. In that version, Beetlejuice wasn't a trickster ghost. He was a reptilian winged monster who could fly, shapeshift, and stalk his victims. Instead of playing pranks on the Dietz family, he terrorized Lydia in disturbing ways and actively tried to kill Adam and Barbara Maitland. Imagine something closer to a demonic predator than the crude clown we know today. When Tim Burton read it, he loved the idea of a haunting but hated the tone. He thought the concept had potential, but it needed absurdity to balance the horror. So Burton brought in writer Warren Scarron, who reshaped Beetlejuice into a dark comedy. Still dangerous, but now with punchlines instead of pure malice. That rewrite turned the movie from a grim, terrifying ghost story into the surreal, unforgettable cult classic we got. Sometimes horror is scary, but laughing at horror? That's even scarier. Fact number 2. Michael Keaton wasn't the studio's first choice. It's hard to imagine anyone other than Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice. The wild eyes, the manic laugh, the rotting teeth. But believe it or not, the studio didn't want him. In fact, he wasn't even on their list. Warner Brothers was looking for someone more bankable. They wanted a star whose name alone could sell tickets. Names floated around included Sammy Davis Jr., a Vegas legend and Rat Pack icon. Yes, the studio seriously thought about casting him as Beetlejuice. Others tossed into the mix were bigger, safer Hollywood names. Actors who could headline a movie, but lacked the chaotic unpredictability Tim Burton wanted. Burton, however, had a different vision. He had seen Keaton's work and recognized something the executives didn't. Keaton had this explosive, offbeat energy that couldn't be bottled up. He wasn't polished, he wasn't safe. And that's exactly what the character needed. Keaton ended up creating almost everything about Beetlejuice himself. The greasy hair, the moldy tucks, the disgusting teeth, and of course that gravelly, chaotic voice. When he finally appeared on screen, he didn't just play Beetlejuice. He was Beetlejuice, a storm of insanity the studio never saw coming. Fact number 3. Before Beetlejuice, Tim Burton was just the weird guy in Hollywood. Today, Tim Burton is a household name, but in the early 80s, he was just that weird guy in Hollywood. The one whose ideas were too strange, too dark, too risky for most studios. Before Beetlejuice, Burton had been working at Disney, where his short films were considered too bizarre for kids. His scripts often got passed over. Agents didn't know what to do with him. He wasn't seen as a bankable director, just a guy obsessed with dark cartoons and gothic worlds. That all changed with Pee-wee's Big Adventure, 1985. Burton's first feature film became a surprise hit, proving that his offbeat, surreal humor actually worked on the big screen. Suddenly, studios started paying attention. They realized he had a unique cinematic language, one that mixed horror, comedy, and surreal visuals in a way no one else could. So when Beetlejuice came around, Burton had just enough clout to push it forward. Even then, executives weren't sure. But Pee-wee gave him the credibility to make his ghostly vision a reality. Without that one quirky film about a man and his bicycle, Beetlejuice might never have happened. Fact number 4. The role nearly went to another legendary actor. Believe it or not, there were serious talks about casting Robin Williams as Beetlejuice. That's right, the same Robin Williams who would later bring chaos to roles like the genie in Aladdin. Williams was known for his rapid-fire improv, his manic energy, and his ability to shift from hilarious to unsettling in a heartbeat. Sound familiar? The studio thought Williams could deliver the same level of unpredictability Burton wanted, but Burton was hesitant. Williams was already a rising star with his own style, and Burton worried it would overpower the film. Michael Keaton, by comparison, was still a wild card, someone who could create a brand new character from scratch without audiences expecting Robin Williams being Robin Williams. It's fascinating to imagine what Beetlejuice might have looked like with Robin in the striped suit. He would have been incredible, no doubt, but the character would have been very different, probably more lovable and less grotesque. Burton stuck to his instincts, and Keaton delivered something no one had ever seen before. Sometimes casting against the studio's wishes is exactly what makes a movie timeless. Fact number 5, Beetlejuice is barely in the movie. Here's the crazy part. Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice only has about 17 minutes of screen time in the entire movie. That's it, less than 20 minutes. And yet his presence is so explosive, so unforgettable, that he completely overshadows everything else. Think about it. The movie is 92 minutes long. Most of it follows Adam and Barbara as they try to navigate the afterlife, deal with the Dietz family, and figure out how to haunt their own house. Beetlejuice doesn't even show up until almost halfway through. But when he does, he dominates every frame. This is a perfect example of the less is more philosophy in filmmaking. By keeping Beetlejuice off screen for so long, his eventual appearance feels bigger, louder, and more chaotic. The mystery builds up and then, boom, Keaton bursts in like a hurricane of filth and comedy. It's rare for a character with so little screen time to define an entire movie, but Keaton's performance proves it can be done. He didn't need hours of footage. He just needed minutes to create one of cinema's most unforgettable icons. Fact number 6, Beetlejuice was almost rated X. When you think of Beetlejuice, you think PG, a weird, spooky comedy you could technically watch with your family. But the original script, that would have landed an X rating for sure. In that early draft, Beetlejuice wasn't just a mischievous ghost. He was a full-on predator who wanted to assault Lydia instead of marry her. Yeah, it was dark. Even some of the death scenes were way more brutal. For example, the car crash that kills Adam and Barbara was written with bloody, gruesome detail instead of the cartoony version we saw. There was even more gore in the afterlife, like corpses rotting in graphic ways. Warner Brothers quickly realized they couldn't release that kind of movie under Tim Burton's name. So Burton and writer Michael McDowell reworked the script, shifting Beetlejuice into a perverted, but ultimately cartoonish trickster. The sexual assault angle was dropped, the violence was toned down, and the movie leaned into campy humor. It's wild to think that without those changes, Beetlejuice wouldn't be a cult comedy. It would be a disturbing, forgotten horror flick. The rewrite didn't just save the movie, it made it iconic. Fact number 7, Michael Keaton designed his own look. One of the coolest things about Beetlejuice is how unique he looks. The striped suit, the messy green hair, the disgusting teeth, the moldy skin. But here's the kicker. Most of that wasn't in the script. Michael Keaton came up with it himself. Burton gave Keaton just one direction. This character has been around for centuries. He's lived through every era of time Keaton ran with it. He asked the costume department to make his suit look like it had been dug out of the ground. He worked with the makeup team to design rotting skin with patches of mold. He even picked out the giant fake teeth to make Beetlejuice's speech sound grosser and more unhinged. That infamous striped suit? Keaton's idea too. Burton loved it so much it became Beetlejuice's signature look. The best part? Keaton stayed in character even when the cameras weren't rolling, creeping out cast and crew with his insane improvisations. By the time shooting wrapped, it was clear. Keaton hadn't just played Beetlejuice, he had invented him. Fact number 8, Tim Burton. Almost didn't direct, it seems impossible now, but Tim Burton nearly wasn't in the director's chair for Beetlejuice. At the time, Burton had only one feature film under his belt, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. That movie was a hit, but it was quirky children's comedy. Nothing that suggested he could pull off a supernatural horror comedy. Warner Brothers originally wanted a more established director. Names like Wes Craven and even Stanley Kubrick were tossed around. But Burton fought hard for the chance, and he won largely because he connected with the material in a way no one else could. For Burton, the afterlife wasn't just about scares. It was about creating a strange, whimsical world where death was absurd, bureaucratic, and darkly funny. He wasn't interested in straight horror or traditional comedy. He wanted to blur the lines. The studio took a gamble on him, and it paid off big time. Beetlejuice not only cemented Burton's career, but also proved that his bizarre, gothic imagination could become mainstream. Without this movie, we might never have gotten Batman, Edward Scissorhands, or The Nightmare Before Christmas. Fact number 9. The sandworms were handmade. Stop motion before CGI, special effects teams had to get creative. And Beetlejuice is the perfect example. The giant sandworms that stalk Adam and Barbara in the afterlife? They weren't computer-generated at all. They were old-school, painstakingly created with stop-motion animation and miniatures. The production team built detailed clay models and filmed them frame by frame, moving the creatures bit by bit to create the illusion of movement. The backgrounds were painted sets, giving everything that surreal, storybook look. The result was deliberately campy and weird. Burton didn't want the sandworms to feel realistic. He wanted them to feel like something out of a twisted children's book. And because the effects were so stylized, they hold up surprisingly well today. It's also worth noting that stop motion would go on to become a huge part of Burton's legacy. From The Nightmare Before Christmas to Corpse Bride, you can see the seeds of his love for animation right here in Beetlejuice. Fact number 10. Lydia was almost played by a different actress. Winona Ryder made Lydia Deetz unforgettable. The gothic teenager obsessed with death who somehow ends up saving the day. But she wasn't the studio's first choice. In fact, multiple young actresses were considered before Ryder even got the call. One of the top names? Alyssa Milano. At the time, she was already a TV star, and the studio thought her fame could bring more teen audiences. Another was Sarah Jessica Parker, who was still in her early career phase. Even Jennifer Connelly was rumored to be on the list. But when Ryder auditioned, she brought something none of the others had: authenticity. She wasn't just acting goth, she was goth. She wore her own thrift store black clothes to the audition and carried an attitude that perfectly matched Burton's vision. Burton instantly knew she was the one, and it paid off. Ryder became the beating heart of the movie, grounding all the madness with her deadpan delivery. Without her, Lydia could have been just another weird teen stereotype. With her, she became an icon. Fact number 11. Beetlejuice only has 17 minutes of screen time. Here's the craziest thing. For a movie named after him, Beetlejuice barely appears in it. Michael Keaton is only on screen for 17 minutes total in the entire 92-minute runtime. That's less than 20% of the movie. Despite being the title character, Beetlejuice doesn't actually show up until about 25 minutes in. Most of the story focuses on Adam and Barbara trying to adjust to their afterlife and dealing with the Deetz family moving in. But here's the genius. Keaton's limited time made his scenes even more impactful. Every second he's on screen, he's stealing the spotlight. His chaotic energy, gross humor, and unpredictable outbursts made audiences crave more. It's kind of like Jaws, when the shark barely appears, but when it does, you remember it forever. The scarcity made Beetlejuice larger than life. That's why even with less than 20 minutes of screen time, Keaton managed to create one of the most iconic movie characters of the 1980s. Fact number 12. The special effects team worked on a tiny budget. Here's something wild. Beetlejuice looks like a big, weird spectacle, but the effects team only had a $1 million budget for everything. That's ridiculously small, even for the 1980s. So instead of aiming for realism, Tim Burton embraced the cheapness. He told the team to make the effects look fake on purpose. That's why the monsters look stop motion, the miniatures look like toys, and the makeup looks exaggerated. It was a creative gamble that worked. The cheesy, handmade vibe gave the film its quirky charm. Instead of scaring audiences with hyper-realism, Burton made them laugh at how absurd the afterlife looked. This low-budget creativity even won the movie an Academy Award for Best Makeup. Think about it. A movie about a disgusting, pervy ghost beat out massive Hollywood productions because Burton leaned into his limitations. It's proof that sometimes working with less money forces you to be way more creative. Fact number 13, the studio hated the title. Beetlejuice, Tim Burton knew what he wanted to call his movie, Beetlejuice. But the executives at Warner Brothers hated the title. They thought it sounded silly, childish, and would turn audiences away. The studio suggested alternatives like House Ghosts or Scared Sheetless. Yes, that was a real title they considered. Burton, annoyed by their interference, sarcastically pitched another name, The Ghost with the Most. To his horror, the studio almost said yes. Thankfully, Burton fought back and convinced them to stick with Beetlejuice. Ironically, the name they hated so much ended up being unforgettable. Imagine trying to market this movie today as Scared Sheetless. It wouldn't have worked. It goes to show, sometimes the strangest, boldest title is the one that makes a film stand out. Fact number 14, Alec Baldwin hated his performance. Alec Baldwin plays Adam Maitland, one half of the sweet ghost couple stuck haunting their old house. Fans loved him in the role, but Baldwin himself couldn't stand his performance. In later interviews, he admitted he felt completely lost on set. He didn't understand Tim Burton's bizarre vision and had trouble figuring out how to balance the horror with the comedy. After filming wrapped, Baldwin was convinced the movie would flop. Of course, the exact opposite happened. Beetlejuice became a cult classic, and Baldwin's performance was praised for being awkwardly charming. His chemistry with Gina Davis gave the movie its emotional core, balancing out all of Beetlejuice's chaos. It's funny, the role Baldwin thought would sink his career ended up being one of his most beloved. Sometimes actors are their own worst critics. Fact number 15, the Day-O scene was almost cut. One of the most famous moments in Beetlejuice is the dinner party scene, where the guests suddenly burst into a possessed conga line while singing Day-O, the Banana Boat song. It's iconic, but believe it or not, the studio wanted to cut it. Warner Brothers executives thought the scene was too weird, too long, and didn't fit the tone of the movie. They worried audiences wouldn't understand why a horror comedy suddenly turned into a Caribbean sing-along. Tim Burton fought hard to keep it in. He believed it was the perfect way to show that the ghosts weren't scary killers. They were pranksters. Catherine O'Hara, who played Delia Dietz, also pushed for it, saying it was her favorite scene to shoot. When the movie finally came out, the Day-O sequence became one of its most iconic moments. It's the scene everyone remembers, and it turned Harry Belafonte's Old Calypso hit into a pop culture anthem. Sometimes the weirdest creative risks become the most memorable. Fact number 16, Beetlejuice was originally much scarier. In the earliest draft of the script, Beetlejuice wasn't the wacky prankster we know today. He was a full-on demon. Instead of cracking jokes and pulling gross stunts, he was violent, predatory, and even targeted Lydia in a much darker way. This version of the script leaned heavily into horror. Beetlejuice shape-shifted into terrifying creatures, murdered people without hesitation, and stalked the Dietz family in graphic ways. His goal wasn't just to marry Lydia. It was to dominate and control her. Tim Burton thought this was too dark. He wanted the movie to be unsettling, yes, but also funny and fun. So he pushed the character into comedy. Michael Keaton's improvisations helped cement this new direction, turning Beetlejuice into a disgusting clown instead of a terrifying monster. It's wild to think that if Burton hadn't stepped in, Beetlejuice might have been remembered as a disturbing horror flick instead of a quirky cult comedy. Fact number 17. Gina Davis loved the role so much. She wanted a sequel. Gina Davis, who played Barbara Maitland, absolutely adored being part of Beetlejuice. She loved the weirdness of the script, the playfulness of the effects, and the chemistry she had with Alec Baldwin. After the movie became a hit, Davis was one of the first cast members to push for a sequel. She thought there was so much more to explore about the afterlife and the Maitlands' adventures. For years, Warner Brothers kept teasing different sequel ideas. Davis said she would have returned in a heartbeat if they'd asked. Unfortunately, as time went on, the focus shifted to Beetlejuice himself, and the Maitlands were eventually written out of most sequel concepts. Still, Davis has nothing but fond memories of the film. She once said it was one of the most enjoyable shoots of her entire career. Fact number 18. Beetlejuice was a surprise box office hit. When Beetlejuice hit theaters in 1988, no one really knew what to expect. The studio thought it was too weird to succeed, critics weren't sure if audiences would get it, and even some of the cast thought it would flop. But against all odds, the movie grossed nearly $75 million worldwide on just a $15 million budget. That made it a massive hit for its time, and it outperformed many bigger, safer studio films released that same year. The success proved there was a market for strange, experimental comedies. It also cemented Tim Burton as one of Hollywood's most exciting new directors. Without Beetlejuice's box office success, we might not have gotten Batman the following year. It's a reminder that sometimes the strangest projects, the ones nobody believes in, end up becoming classics. Fact number 19. Beetlejuice inspired a cartoon series. The success of the movie led to an unexpected spin-off, an animated TV show. Running from 1989 to 1991, the Beetlejuice cartoon took the character in a much friendlier direction. In the series, Beetlejuice wasn't a villain. He was Lydia's mischievous best friend. Together, they went on surreal adventures through the Netherworld, a bizarre place filled with oddball monsters and creatures. Tim Burton produced the show, and while it toned down the creepiness, it kept the same weird sense of humor. The cartoon was so popular that many kids in the 90s actually knew Beetlejuice from Saturday morning TV before ever seeing the original film. It showed just how flexible the character was. He could be a disgusting, crude ghoul for adults and a slapstick troublemaker for kids. Fact number 20. Beetlejuice almost got a sequel called Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. Here's the weirdest fact of all. The planned sequel to Beetlejuice was going to be called Beetlejuice Goes Hawaiian. Yes, really. The idea was that the Dietz family would move to Hawaii, where they'd encounter a haunted resort built on top of an ancient burial ground. Beetlejuice would then get involved in a surf contest. It was part ghost story, part beach party movie. The project floated around for years with multiple drafts written, but it never made it to production. Both Michael Keaton and Winona Ryder said they would have returned, but even they admitted the concept was ridiculous. Eventually, the idea was shelved. Fans had to wait decades for a real sequel, which finally started moving forward in the 2020s. But the thought of Beetlejuice in a Hawaiian shirt, riding a surfboard, will forever be one of Hollywood's strangest what-ifs. And there you have it. 20 weird facts you didn't know about Beetlejuice. From a darker horror script to a scrapped Hawaiian surf sequel, this cult classic has one of the strangest behind-the-scenes stories in movie history. It just goes to show that sometimes the weirdest risks pay off. Beetlejuice shouldn't have worked, but it became a classic that fans still love decades later. So now I've got to ask, which fact blew your mind the most? Was it the scrapped sequel, the tiny budget, or maybe the fact that Beetlejuice is barely in the movie? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want more deep dives into the strangest stories in film.